Good day, IOA. This is Ellen Miller, IOA's Executive Director, and I'm here joined with DEIB Committee and former task force leadership. First, let me introduce Jaya Calloway, Brett Hathaway Harris, our former DEIB task force and now committee co-chairs, and Heidi Stensby, our current DEIB committee co-chair. We've got some exciting news to share with you about the work of the committee and what we're just about to launch. But before we get started, just wanted to give you a little bit of history on the progression of our DEIB work at IOA. Back in July of 2020, the board established a special DEIB task force to look at important issues of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging for our association. The task force worked extraordinarily hard and provided some extraordinary thought leadership, and was so successful and so engaged that the board changed the special task force into a permanent standing committee. So important for our association and for any association. And any group that's doing this work needs to be focused on DEIB issues. So we have today Jaya and Brett talking about the history of the committee and how we got here, and Heidi talking about implementing our brand new DEIB framework. So let me turn it over to Brett and Jaya first to tell us a little bit about the why. Why are we doing this? Why did we need to create a framework for our association?
All right, well, I'll just start off, if you don't mind, Brett. We really were honored to take on this large undertaking to integrate and form a committee that, of course, began as just a task force. But with that, we really felt that diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging was really a part of the foundation of what an ombuds should be. And so a part of that, we needed to establish some competencies and really have some organization on how we went about organizing and implementing diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging within the association. So from the establishment of the committee, Britt and I, along with our wonderful committee members, all agreed that there was a framework that needed to be established. The difficult part was, however, is agreeing on what framework that would be, how we would go about doing that, because it's a journey, right? But at the same time, there are many, many points in which you can enter along the journey. So we wanted to be very intentional in how we approach this. And so it took a while for us to all agree on a framework, but we did. And in the end, the results, we were very, very, very happy and extremely faithful in passing the torch on to Heidi. But I will certainly turn it over to Brett to establish a little bit more on, or to talk a little bit more on how we established the framework. But it really was an intentional and thought put behind how and where we would start with our framework.
Thanks, Jaya. Brett, tell us a little bit about the framework itself.
Sure. So I will say, just sort of building on what Jay said a moment ago about why we did this, really our task force and then committee, we just had such a long list of things we would love to see done. And pretty immediately we realized there's no way that one committee can do all of this work. And also it's not best practice, right? So a framework or DEIB work in an organization should really be embedded throughout the organization, and it should be a shared responsibility. And I would say that was sort of a jumping off point where we started with the framework, and something that's included in the framework is a little bit on the best practices of these frameworks. There are, of course, so many ways to do it. You can have very complex frameworks, with all kinds of acronyms and all sorts of moving parts and different groups doing different pieces of it. And those might be great for some organizations, but all of us had experienced, maybe in our home organizations where we ombuds, DEIB frameworks, or many of us had experienced DEIB frameworks that felt too complicated. So we did, in the end, decide for something that we thought would be a very simple way to embed this work throughout the organization and to make it a shared responsibility. And the way that made sense was for each committee to think about the DEIB related concerns or issues or items that might fall under in their area, and to find a way to focus on those things, even if we're just chipping away at it a few items at a time. And, you know, when it sort of transformed it from this giant list that we had as a DEIB committee of like, we would love to do all of this, to, oh, you know, looking at bylaws might fit under this committee, and looking at, you know, international outreach would fit under this committee. So we were able to sort of see a structure where we might be able to do much more. And not only that, but get everyone on board with really the DEIB lens, and looking at our policies, our procedures, you know, what we do, how we do our annual conference, all through that lens, hopefully. So I would say, just in summary, the framework itself is an effort to have each committee set some priorities on an annual basis, maybe one big priority or goal, maybe a few smaller ones, and then set an action plan for how to do that, and then evaluate at the end of the year what they've been able to accomplish, and maybe if they need to continue that goal, or if that one's wrapped up and in the next year they'd move to something else.
That's tremendous. You know, I've worked with a lot of organizations really grappling with DEIB issues. And one of the challenges is when it's top down or bottom up. And, you know, the approach that you have really integrates it at every level of the organization. So thank you so much for that thought leadership and really moving it forward. And so we have a framework, and we're just about to, by the time this gets out to the membership, we will have presented this to all of our chairs of our various committees and task forces. But there's a big role for our DEIB committee in that, in the implementation phase. Heidi, can you tell us a little bit about what you've got planned?
Yes, I would love to. And if I could just kind of ride the coattails of Brett and Jaya a little bit and share that all of us who are part of the committee, and it's a good sized committee, I think we would say we don't consider ourselves foremost experts. I think what we could say is that we have a breadth of expertise. And as we came into this, as both Jaya and Brett have underscored, I think initially we had so much ambition and we wanted to probably bite off more than we really could fit into the framework that we ended up developing. And in part, that what we had to do was reach consensus about what was doable, but also not just recognizing for our committee what is doable in terms of creating a document, but what's going to be scalable for all of the committees across the IOA. And I often refer to us at the IOA as a tapestry. And so what I envision is that the DEIB tenets are going to be really important threads embedded into the tapestry that we're going to bring out. And so back to the framework and the implementation, because we have this phenomenal framework and it's only good if we implement it, right? And so I think what we all feel really good about, and through Brett's and Jaya's leadership, got to a point where we have a document that is understandable, it's usable, and I don't think anybody will be overwhelmed. There might be some dissatisfaction. We didn't include certain things that people feel pretty strongly about, but what I would say is this is an evolution. And so we're coming out with a framework to introduce that the board has said, yes, we believe this is a really good starting point. And so committees, we want you to be thinking about these 3 or 4 principles that we believe to be important. And then as we continue as an organization within the IOA, we might decide to build on that. And I hope we will. But through the next phase, it's important that we clarify for everybody's benefit, and especially for leaders of committees, what the plan is, so that they, as they think about the work that they're doing in their committee, can think about, okay, are we being diverse? Are we being equitable? Are we being inclusive? And do all of the activities that we have in this committee lend to people feeling like they belong? And that's what we're going to roll out. And then from there, I don't know, Ellen, how far you want me to go. It will really be the board's responsibility to ensure that everyone's doing, is aligning to DEIB work. But we want to make sure that we track that and so that we can share with the broader membership what we assume are going to be good results.
That's great. Thanks for adding that piece. One of the not one of the benefits is the thought leadership of this fabulous framework, but the committee itself, as I understand, is going to liaise. So you're going to have liaisons from the committee going to every single one of our sections and task forces, just to provide perspective on the journey that you've been through and to provide sort of technical assistance. They're not the police to make sure that the framework is proceeding, right? They are sort of shepherds there to assist and colleagues to provide some perspective. So I think that's a wonderful way to proceed. This work is never done. So we're excited that we have a framework. We're excited to launch the implementation, but our work is not done in the DEIB space. It's just the beginning of a continued conversation that we need to have. And while this doesn't apply to member by member, the guiding principles, we'll do some community conversations in the fall on some of those guiding principles, just for the opportunity to get members together so we can talk about what that means for you.
And Ellen, can I add one more thing?
Yes.
Because one of the things that has really struck me as being a member of the DEIB committee and now chairing the DEIB committee is the goodwill within the committee and the interest in making sure that we are diverse, that we're equitable, and that we're inclusive. And I would say that mirrors what I've seen across the IOA. And so my own sense is that this isn't going to be a high mountain that we climb, but that it's really just about calling all of us to make sure we're okay, I'm going to mix my metaphors. It's a mountain climb. No, I don't think so. But that we're all rowing, let's say, in the same direction. Yeah. So picture a stream instead of a mountain. And that's why I really believe that it's going to be a positive for us, and it's going to be pretty easily navigable. And like I said, then we just continue to evolve. But tremendous amount of goodwill.
Yeah, absolutely. Jay and Brett, is there anything else that you want to add before we close?
One thing that I really wanted to touch on is the importance of our work, not only as ombuds, but as practitioners and champions of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. As organizational ombuds, it's our job to, as they say, ombuds where you are, right? But at the same time, as the workforce changes, what we'll begin to see, what we should see now, is that there is integration of diversity, equity, inclusion in so many, if not all, of our workplaces. And so how are we to ombuds where we are if we are not understanding and practicing and championing for diversity, equity, and inclusion? It's important to know that there is no navigation without kind of understanding the compass and how our work is integrated into the work of a diversity, equity, inclusion champion. And so to me, it seems like it's a part of our heartbeat. It's a part of our fabric as ombuds. And I just want to emphasize and hopefully kind of initiate a charge to other ombuds to take a similar approach in how you practice.
Beautifully said.
That was such a beautiful sort of close up, Jay. I would just echo that and just say this has been an honor to work on this project. And I really hope that, when our fellow IOA members see this effort, that they will be inspired by it the same way we're kind of inspired and invigorated by this project and want to join in and help this effort move forward.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much. I hope everybody feels the excitement and enthusiasm, and that we've accomplished our goal to spread it a little bit to all of you. So stay tuned, and more conversation, lots more conversation about DEIB coming up. So thanks very much, everybody.